remind me of Jim.
Well, you like blueberry donuts?
You like chocolate covered donuts?
No, this is blueberry, buddy. You want it?
What are 5 things you did yesterday? What are 5 things you did last week?
Only 5? I could give you about 500.
Two. That's fine. That's good.
See, it's easy. It's easy for me to say.
Are we ready to start? Are we ready to start?
Yeah, we're ready to get started here.
Listen to Paul.
Thank you all for making it through the vlog today.
I didn't have any fun.
I was professional.
Did everybody turn in their test?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Did everybody register? Sign in?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Next week, you're on vacation, you don't have to do any tests. Bill Hale's going to be here next week, and Peter Hernandez is going to be here too. So that's going to be a good class, so be ready for that. We have an individual. Oh, be sure you use your phone. I gotta do mine too. Everybody use your phone, and let's be sure that we listen to the speaker today. And because she's got a lot of good stuff, she's got a good treat for y'all. Okay? So be ready for that. This lady is our volunteer director.
Well, excuse me just a moment. Can I interrupt just for a second?
Sure.
How many of y'all I may interrupt you anyway, right? So, how many of y'all were here at our recent membership meeting last Thursday?
And I gotta say
Several of y'all. Great, good to see you. So the ones that weren't there, this gentleman right up here, this tall, slender young gentleman,
And I need to make an announcement.
the board of directors made a special recognition to him. He was the master gardener of the season.
Yes.
So if y'all have any great gardening questions, associated questions, all you gotta do is go over there and say, hey, I need 30 minutes of your time being here, okay? I'm sorry for the interruption, but go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Anyway, our speaker, she'll be up here in just a minute. You've already met her once. Her name is Beth Smith. She was in class 37. And she's our volunteer director now. So anyway.
Okay, I have one real quick
April has
thing.
something she wants to tell you real quick, and then we'll get Beth up here.
All right, apparently a few people didn't get the vegetable project assignments. Okay, you're one, okay. So I'm gonna hand these out to y'all. You get 2 hours for doing it. So once you complete, and I'll assign you a vegetable. Once you complete this,
Hey, Nathan.
and turn it in a Cat Adams, you send it to me and I'll give it to Cat. You get 2 whole volunteer hours for doing this. And what it's for is hopefully next year or the year after, who knows, we're going to be doing up a calendar. And we're going to use some of your research in the calendar. That's your example. And we also have a few extra vegetables. We had more vegetables than we did people. So if you want another 2 hours.
You have a list of what's left?
I'm going to give you the list of what's left in just a second.
Why don't you just tell me what I need to do?
You got one more. Somebody want to do?
I didn't go once.
Alright, somebody did double, you already did one, because you didn't do one at all, right? I did one. Oh, you already did. I was gonna do it. Sorry. Alright, I need someone to do green beans, First hand, okay, green beans are gone. Onions.
I'll do. I'll take whatever the next one is. I'll take the next one.
Okay. Potatoes.
Okay, so is that me?
You got the next one, yeah.
Alright.
You got onions, Macy. Macy, you got onions, okay? Onions,
Is this for doing another one or?
Yeah.
You have it?
just the ones I just gave out a sheet to.
Oh,
All right. Do we need somebody for onions? Okay, yours is up first. Okay. And Brussels sprouts.
That's the one that I did. That's the one that's missing that I turned in.
Go ahead and do Brussels sprouts again. I told her you
That's
turned
probably
it.
a copy that's already done. I don't know.
Okay, I don't know what happened to it either. Go ahead and give it to me again. That's fine. We'll give you credit. You get 2 hours once you complete it and get it to me. Do you still not have one?
I don't have a.
How about, did anybody do one on beets?
I'll do beef.
Give me another vegetable. Somebody give me a vegetable. Spaghetti squash. There you go, spaghetti squash.
That's what mine is. Mine was.
Zucchini?
Kawani melons.
Zucchini. How about zucchini? Yeah. All right. That's done. Okay. Just send it to me or give it to me when you get it. She wants it by March 11th.
Okay.
So we have to get it to her by March 11th. Yes.
Can I have a minute, real quick?
Sure.
Just,
Go for it.
all right, folks. I brought in this catalog, Baker Creek Heirloom Catalog. You got them? You got
Yes, they're great.
them? Anybody want to look at this? They're heirloom seeds.
And you have
I just want it back because it's, I've been waiting for weeks for this to come in. But it's like the prettiest seed catalog out there. And they're all heirloom seeds, so they reproduce food form.
Do they have a website?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I've got that.
Is it called?
It's just Baker Creek, it's rare seeds. Rare seeds. Sir?
Lisa, isn't it? I got it.
Oh, yeah? The dude's a hippie, isn't he?
I was just about to email it to you.
Yep, I got it.
That'd be good.
The great outfit, I love it. All right.
Thank you.
I don't
Are
work
we
for my
ready?
phone.
Yeah, got that.
I just support them.
Just communing with another hippie, huh, man?
Where they at?
I think Michigan.
Missouri.
You got a micer?
Missouri, yeah, Missouri.
They're not like me.
That'll work.
They have plants from all over the world. I've got some beans, some pole beans from Africa.
Hey, Frank, where do I click?
1 minute has expired.
I'm not familiar with this format. Where do I click?
So that's the slides that are on the screen, and that'll be your next one. And you can use that button, or you can use that
Okay.
to go to the next.
All right,
good.
everybody, here's Beth.
Hi, guys. Glad to see you all here again. Before we get started on entomology, I've got some dates I want to give to you. And these are volunteer opportunities.
Okay.
We are going to be meeting today is the 25th. Tomorrow from 1 to 4, and then again Friday from 1 to 4. These dates I'm going to give you right now, you're the only people who have them right now. So you can go ahead and get ready. I got to find March.
That's so cool. That is cool. Trust hearing it.
Okay, now if you go into March, literally starting on the 6th and going through the 27th, we're going to work on pot painting all those Thursdays. We hope to have painting. We're taking clay pots and we're decorating them. Then we'll spray some sealant on them so they're good and waterproof. We'll plot some dirt in it and put some succulents in it for the plant show. Plants it. Yep, Thursdays. Here.
Oh, here.
Upstairs.
Oh, what time?
1 to 4. 1 to 4 all those days.
So tomorrow, 1 to 4 here?
Yep. Now tomorrow you'll either have a choice to pack seeds or to do pots. So we're still finishing that thanks to these 3 people right here. They've packed about 1,800 seed packets right now. So, Friday here as well, yes. Come join us. It's a lot of fun. It's real laid back. We get our supplies out and we chat and do stuff. So come see us. Okay, a little bit about myself. I was in class 37, like Paul told you. I started doing Master Gardener out of necessity. I am from the East Coast, and I came here, thought I was going to be able to plow up some dirt, throw in some seeds, be patient, and have a great crop of food. I got nothing but rocks. So after 2 years of frustration here in Seguin, I just so happened to meet April and a couple of other people at a Ask a Master Gardener program they were running up at Walmart. And they were like, "Are you interested in gardening?" And I'm like, "Yes, but I can't do anything here." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's why we're here. We're master gardeners and we teach people how to plant and grow things in this climate." And I'm like, "I'm Muriel." So signed up for that real quick. By the time I had gotten about halfway through, I realized that this was an organization that I wanted to spend some time with, because there are great people in this organization. So I immediately felt, because of my background as a teacher, I felt probably one of the best ways I could serve the organization was to do advanced training and to help teach some of the classes that go on here. So that's what I did, and I do have advanced training in entomology. It's not difficult. There are lots of different training activities where you go to different places and you do a lot of hands-on things. But when you're doing something a little more cerebral like entomology, I did it all online. And it was really easy to do. And it was great because I learned a whole lot from a whole lot of people who knew a whole bunch about stuff I'd never seen before. So that was very cool. So let's talk about entomology. All right. Why did it do that? Why did it do that, Frank?
I just got dizzy.
I'm getting dizzy too. I don't know how it did that. Okay. Entomology is a group of scientific endeavors that looks into all kinds of things related to bugs. Lots of things here until I started looking at the information that I obtained through the class. I didn't realize a lot of these things actually had insect issues. But they used insects for lots of things. They use them medicinally. There is constant work being done to understand bugs in agriculture because they do decimate field crops. Forensics, there are lots of people who study bugs that are just decomposers. Urban and structural, and that's probably one of the things that we all deal with more than anything else because we always have that annual pest control person who comes through our house and takes care of some of the issues that we have. Toxiconomy basically talks about the different things that are on an insect that gives it extrasensory inputs. So that's an interesting thing. How do their breathing work? Because it's in spiracles along the sides of their bodies. Why do they have antennas that look this particular way? Genetic and molecular studies, which I find very surprising, doing genetic studies on insects. But they do, and probably you can remember back in biology class doing activities with fruit flies. Some of them were black-eyed, some of them were red-eyed. They just take it to another level. And then toxicology. So there are a lot of things that are related to insects that are out there in the science field that we probably never even thought about. Well, the perception of insects is kind of strange. Sometimes you'll see things and it will be what a wonderful discovery this is. This is a fascinating bug. And they'll go turn to another channel, and they've got somebody on TV trying to kill that exact same bug, whether it's beneficial or not. But our perception of bugs is kind of ooey. We don't really like them that much. But they're extremely essential in our ecology, because if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have no food supply. But these are gigantic bugs. Here you can see the size comparisons. I think that's Photoshopped, to be honest with you. Dragonfly that big. Yeah. Now, I have gone through Savannah where they had bagworms so bad that they were hanging from every single tree in sight. This is a giant cockroach.
That's from Florida.
Yes.
They need to keep them in Florida. And then my favorite, the monster movies from the 50s that had all the giant creatures. Those were all fun. And we get further into that idea of how creepy bugs are, we can get into something like this. When you look at them, if you didn't know what they were, they are pretty creepy looking when you get right down to it. I mean, to think that's a spider, and look at all of his fuzzy stuff coming off of his head. He's pretty cool. That's a flea. Up close and personal. It does. Now you know where they come up with all the strange monsters for these alien movies.
No way.
It just blows your imagination.
No way.
Critter after critter. Here's a tick. Ooh. Doesn't it? A little fluffy monster. Well, why are we going to study insects? Well, first of all, we coexist with them every day. There's nothing we can do. If we go outside, we're going to interact with bugs. They help eliminate harmful insects, and they also help with decomposing. Sometimes they can be so overzealous that they can actually jeopardize our food sources. So we have to have this nice balance between the insects that we want to tolerate and the insects that we don't. They are becoming more and more valuable as a protein source, especially in the Asian countries. They have at least 40% of their protein daily coming from eating insects. My father was an adventurer. He traveled all over the place hunting. He went to Montana one year and he came back with this huge box of chocolates. We were so excited. Dad brought us chocolates. You bit into it and it crunched. I'm like, well, you know, what could it possibly be? Yeah, I'm thinking it's a nut of some sort, and my dad's sitting back there watching me with this big grin on his face. And then I'm like, man, this really tastes different. He's like, oh, it's a grasshopper. Isn't that cool? So I was like, well, yeah, it tastes pretty good. So growing up, seeing different kinds of insects, it was nothing for my dad to catch them and fry them up. And we ate them. Probably the one most interesting thing about these insects is that they're absolute survivors. Some of these insects have been around since way before the dinosaurs. If you've been reading the news lately, it was just reported in National Geographic that they have discovered in a cave in Mexico, a cenote, a tiny little swimming worm that they collected and tested. They believe that particular insect that they found in that one cave was actually the beginning of life on this planet. So they feel like they found some of the very first organisms that came out of the primordial ooze, which is very cool. But every time we have people go down into the Amazon rainforest, more than likely they're coming back with a new species of insect that nobody had ever seen before. Insects are everywhere. They're in our homes, they're where we shop, and where we eat, unfortunately. How many of you have ever worked in fast food? Me too. And the one thing you knew, come time for the inspectors to come, make sure you swept the floor behind the equipment because it was always full of bugs. So they're there. Those restaurants are going to get a pretty high grade as long as they don't see them. And we'll find out why that is in just a little bit, and we'll keep it a mystery. Field crops to our gardens. Well, insects are invasive. They can destroy crops within just a few hours. In Virginia, I lived on a large farm. The man next to me grew lots and lots of corn. It was a bad year for cicadas that year. In about 4 days, the cicadas took down that cornfield. It was stripped. You could walk down it and it looked like it had been attacked by 100 deer because the cobs were just bare. So they can really damage field crops. And thus, if they're damaging field crops, you know what they can do to your gardens. So it's something that we just can't ignore. We have to deal with them. But there is a difference between beneficial bugs and the bugs we want to destroy. So that's really the main purpose of what we're looking at today. Why bugs are beneficial, what they do to help us do what we need to do in our gardens, but what we have to do to make sure that the bad ones get out of the way. If you're going to be gardening outside, you know that you have to maintain a healthy soil. These insects are going to recycle nutrients, they're going to pollinate crops, and they're going to control pests by eating them. It was real interesting. Those of you who were at the last membership meeting, we had an excellent speaker and he talked about flies as pollinators. I was thinking about that before the meeting. Through the entire class, but then we never spoke once about flies. And this gentleman put on a presentation for an hour that talked about the benefits of flies. So now I'm really convinced the flies, as long as they're not in my house, they're allowed to survive. But you can see the beneficial bugs, these are all predators that are going to eat all of these. And you can introduce some of these insects into your garden if you don't naturally have them. One thing I'm blessed with, I got a row of trees at the end of my property and I have praying mantis everywhere. I know somebody in the class, Miss April, she's got cutter ants at her house. What's the one thing praying mantis love more than ice cream? Cutter ants. So I'm going to collect some praying mantis, I'm going to take them over to your yard, and I'm going to cut them loose and see how they hopefully will decimate her crop of cutter ants. They're the one, yeah, some people call them leaf ants. They're the ones that take little bits of the leaf and then you'll see them in a line and they'll all be hefting their little piece of plant.
And they're the ones that have the hole in the ground?
Yes. Yes. They're nasty little bugs. Don't mind them as much as I do those red things because they bite you. Those things are awful. But look at a number of beneficial predators. You don't need many of them. You could put 2 or 3 in your garden. Make sure that they're there and take care of a majority of the things that are in your garden that you don't want to be there anymore. Well, we said insects were survivors, and that is absolutely the case. I have been a rock collector since I was about 4 years old. My grandfather got me into it. He was like, oh, I can occupy the kid, we'll go out and pick up rocks.
You're still picking them up.
I'm still picking up rocks. But since they're survivors, we have got all kinds of good stuff in the records, archaeological records of these insects. These are actually things that I've collected. I really like fossils. They're just too cool. Coming from Virginia, we were all hard minerals over there. Lots of amethyst, lots of citrine, those quartz varieties. Here you don't have that, but man, you got some cool fossils. The ones in amber, are particularly interesting because they literally are like in this little pod that is completely hermetically sealed. And they're exactly like they were when they got caught in that. This particular flea right here, a winged flea, that is almost 300 million years old. That's incredible that we could still recognize a bug that lived on the planet 300 million years ago. They adapt, but somehow they've been able to keep their form. My grandmother always said, cockroaches will outlive us all. Insects are adaptable. One of the main reasons they're highly adaptable is because they are fast reproducers. Very, very fast. With that fast reproductive cycle, their lifespan is very, very short. Some insects will have a lifespan of only a day. Some insects will have a lifespan of up to 30. But the majority of the bugs you're dealing with are very, very limited in the length of time they're going to be on the planet. And they go through lots of changes from the time you first see them until the time you decide they're causing problems. And that's where we want to get on. We don't want the bugs to become a problem. And that's the first time we recognize them. So we're also going to be talking about ways that we can notice that we're having problems with bugs so that we can start it early and kind of mitigate the problems. Well, let's talk about the order of insects, because this is where it gets interesting. And this is how we start understanding how to identify bugs so you can determine what is best to help you eradicate them. We are going to be looking at the bugs that are in this category and some of the true bugs. So we're not going to be looking at all of them. We're going to be looking at ones that are specifically going to be aimed at your garden, either to be a benefit to you or to decimate your crop. So here we go. We are in the class Insecta. So these are all the bugs that we're going to talk about today. And you can see all of these are their cousins. The trilobite is an extinct animal. This is a cousin of the common bugs we have now. They're more like the roly-polies. We have the millipedes and centipedes. We have the class Arachnida. I'm sure you all love that one with the scorpions and spiders. Horseshoe crabs has its own class. And then we have the crustaceans. Not a whole lot of difference biologically between a shrimp and a beetle. It's just not. Rather be the shrimp than the beetle. I can understand that. And here again are your close cousins. Spiders, scorpions, lobsters, all of those. And as you look at more and more bugs, you start looking at bugs that look just like a lobster, sorta, look just like a shrimp, sorta. When you look at the front of a shrimp and the front of a grasshopper, there's not a lot of difference. All right, let's first talk about insect anatomy. Now, I know you probably went through this in high school. You science majors did it again in college. We're going to do it one more time. We're going to do it a little more simply then. We're really going to talk about just the three basic body parts, the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. Remembering that here we have all of the sensory organs. Sometimes the sensory organs will also run down their spines or the sides of their bodies. The thorax is where all the locomotion goes. It's where the legs are attached and where the wings are attached. And then the abdomen is where we have all of the digestion, we have reproductive organs in that particular part of the body. All insects have jointed legs in some way or another. Sometimes being able to recognize the characteristics of that leg are going to help you identify what that particular insect is. Insects have 6 legs, they have antennae, And they have 2 compound eyes and possibly 3 simple eyes. We went back to the spider we saw, those tiny little eyes. Those would be considered simple eyes. Or with the big fly with the huge eyes with the compound eyes. So when we identify insects, we're going to focus on these parts. We're going to focus on their legs, their mouth parts, their wings, their antenna, and their head. It can be that one of the characteristics that your insect has is it has an unusually shaped head. Again, I'll go back to praying mantis. They have a very unique head structure. After you've seen one, you're not going to mistake another mantis. Even if it's not a praying mantis, it's just in the mantis family, you're still going to be able to recognize it just because of that unique shape of its head. But those 5 characteristics are the things we're going to look at the most. Identifying insect legs. There is a wide variety of legs in an insect. We have running and walking legs, and again, they're segmented. Ones that are specifically designed for jumping. We have some of them that can walk across water. We have some of them that can grasp things and actually climb up them. The swimming ones are really cool. And they can dig. Look at this guy right here. See these? Those are diggers. That's a pretty cool adaptation. But those legs are so interesting, and they're so different when you look at the different insects. So you can tell this particular bug here is a walking bug, just by the look of its legs. Antenna is also something that's very important. The fluored antennas, I think, are the most awesome to look at. This little guy is cool, but that guy right there, he's something. So they can be long and furled, they can have different shapes. Ant populations have these strange antennae that start out and then they look like they've been broken and then they hang down. This guy here, dragonfly or butterfly, those long antennae with the bulbs on the end. Those are very cool. Sometimes you can count the number of segments just on the antenna to help you identify what that insect may be. Insect mouth parts. Let's start here with butterflies. Proboscis here, see that long filament that's hanging off his mouth? That's like a long straw. And that's how he gets the nectar out of the flowers. This guy here, he's a nasty little thing. That's what mosquitoes have. And they will actually pierce and then suck. We have the beetles here. Doesn't he look mean? And in some ways, you look at it another way, and it's like, oh, he's got a big smile. And then the sponging, like we see here, and that's common with your houseflies. So those are the types of mouths that we're going to be looking for. All insects go through metamorphosis. You can either have a complete metamorphosis or an incomplete metamorphosis that takes an insect from an egg to an adult. This is grasshoppers. You can see what their eggs look like. And if you compare these two, this is what you call a nymph. This is what came out of this. Little teeny, and it's going to grow. This is the adult. So in an incomplete metamorphosis, you have an individual that is going to be hatching from an egg that's going to have a very similar body shape than its adult. Sometimes they're even hard to identify, the adults from the nymphs, Only way you can really tell really well is because they don't have wings. That's when you know that they're immature. If they're a problem in your garden, this is when you want to get them out. Because by the time they're here, it's too late. They're already eating your crops. And then you're going to spend all your time fighting bugs instead of eating and collecting your food. And then a complete metamorphosis. Everybody uses the example of butterflies because they're just beautiful. What can you say? They start here. Their eggs are even beautiful. Look at them. They're so unique. But the complete metamorphosis really is a drastic change from the time they come out of that egg, which is this caterpillar. You might find those in your garden, and if you ever find them, don't kill them. A lot of these caterpillars, I'd say, kill them and feed them to your chickens. But these don't, because they're going to turn into this eventually. This has got little things on the end of it, little clasps. It'll actually clasp itself into a branch and hang itself upside down. And it creates a chrysalis. While that caterpillar is in the chrysalis, we don't know what happens. It could be fairy godmother came and put a wand over its head. But for some reason, it turned from this to this by being here. That's amazing. If we could do that, imagine what we might be. We could make those X-Men feel ashamed, couldn't we?
How do you tell the difference between those eggs and the eggs you just showed us from the...
When you look at a lot of different eggs, you'll start recognizing characteristics of them. These monarch butterfly eggs always have these little white stars on them. They almost look like little petals on a flower. So you can tell by their size, their color, where they laid them. Some plants will have the eggs underneath the leaf, but there are a lot of different insects that go in trees with leaves, and some of them are even in your grass, and that's where they lay their eggs. So they lay them all over the place.
So do the monarch caterpillars eat just milkweed or?
Yes, pretty much. They like marva plants too.
So they're not going to really hurt anything?
They're really not going to hurt anything that you're going to eat.
They probably wouldn't even be on there then, right?
It's possible that they can be on some of your plants, but in my experience, they're just moving around. But they do consume.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is it true that the monarch butterflies are only butterflies that the birds don't eat?
Now that I've never heard. No.
That's what I heard.
Really?
They'll eat all
I've never heard that. I've got a big hawk that lives up in the trees in my backyard, and it doesn't seem to be picky. It'll go after the little invertebrates, it'll go after the mice, it'll go after the bugs. It doesn't matter.
We have one too.
Do you? Yeah. They're not really discretionary. They'll just eat anything, pretty much.
But monarchs can incorporate some of the bitter compounds from the milkweed in their bodies, and then they are unpalatable.
Are they?
Critters, yeah.
That's a good defense mechanism.
It is.
Eat me once and that's all you want.
And they migrate, right?
Yes, they do. I was coming back from Arizona one day in October, several years ago, and I'd gotten about to El Paso, and all of a sudden there were these butterflies, and they were everywhere. And it was so awful because we were all driving down the highway and we were murdering hundreds and hundreds of butterflies as we were driving down the road. So, you know, that kind of stuff happens all the time. The butterfly population is really dwindling.
Because of cars.
Well, I don't think they help it any. I know the time I was there, I really did a number on them. Because if it says the speed limit's 70, we're going to try about 78, 79. The first order that we're going to talk about in length is Diptera. These are our flies. and our mosquitoes. But look at all the varieties of the flies. They all look different. The majority of the flies up there are beneficial. The ones that we really get annoyed at are the black biting flies. Those are nasty. But for the majority of what we have up here, with the exception of the mosquito, these are all pretty beneficial. And when the majority of these animals get to this particular phase, they're not eating much anything anyway except nectar. So let's talk about the characteristics of the class Diptera. I'm sorry, the order. Flies appear on every single continent. Nobody can escape them. They are crop pollinators and they have a very diverse appetite. They go from consuming stuff that we consider to be extremely nasty to consuming flower petals, flower nectar. Horseflies are probably the worst. They carry lots of diseases, including typhoid, dysentery, and other serious diseases that could really knock you down. So horseflies are not good. But when you think about it, where are those horseflies spending the majority of their time? Out in the middle of that horse dung. So they are spreading disease. They also feed on animal juices. They don't discriminate. If there is something decomposing nearby, they will also consume part of that decomposing body. Let's look at some ones that are very good. Let's start over here with the hoverfly. These are also known as flower flies. Don't they look like little bees? I think that I have seen many of these because I have a problem with bee stings. And I was out in the garden one day where there were a lot of these little bee-like creatures, but none of them came towards me. So I think this is what it was, now that I look back at it. They're the unsung hero of citrus. In Florida and California, where we're growing oranges and mandarins and all kind of nice citrus fruits, these are actually their pollinators. So that is one crop that we absolutely need the flies. The crane fly, what looks like one of those giant mosquitoes. They are absolutely harmless, and they're one of the oldest flies on the planet. 245 million years that fly has been here, and it hasn't really changed its appearance at all. Then the housefly. This is the one that gets on my nerves. They always want to be in your house. I believe in good composting. We get a lot of good compost around here, especially at the mushroom farms. And boy, those black flies are all into it. So those are something that we as gardeners, we can't help but have them because we're nourishing our soil constantly with stuff they want to eat. Yes?
I'm just curious what the typical lifespan, how long does a housefly typically live?
Depending on the breed, the housefly can live up to 30 days.
Okay.
They don't, because if you're living in a place that has a lot of diversity, they're a big meal for bats. Bats love them. But bats love anything that flies and they can put in their mouth. Let's look at characteristics of these insects. Well, the wings. One thing about flies, we think of insects as having 2 pairs of wings. Flies only have 1. 1 pair of wings. They have a large head that you can see them move their head back and forth. So it's movable. And they have those large compound eyes. Antennas are fairly short on a fly. You can see them. They almost look like little stumps coming out of the top of their heads. You can see them right here. That doesn't look like much of an antenna, does it? But that's what it is. And then those big eyes. Their legs, well, they're long and segmented. Their thorax, the enlarged center section of their body, again, is where their legs are attached, where their wings are attached. And their life cycle is a complete life cycle. They turn into a larvae, and that larvae turns into a pupa, not as pretty as a chrysalis of a butterfly. They're usually fairly oblong shaped, almost like a jelly bean. And they run in different colors. This is an example of here. I've seen them in white, gray, almost black. These are reds because of this particular breed of fly. And then they turn into the adult. All right. Orthoptera. Nature's original high jumpers. Ants can carry 50 times their weight on their back. That's incredible if you only weigh 0.02 of an ounce. These particular bugs are not really known as jumping bugs, even though they're in the category. However, this one in particular, that's a very large grasshopper. It's from South Africa. That thing can jump almost 7 feet straight up. Can you imagine that? 7 feet. I can't jump 3 inches sometimes. In the order Orthoptera, that is Orthoptera, means straight wings. And as you look at the grasshopper, especially the one vertically, you can just see the top of the wing here. It's that red area, and it'll go down its back. It's really very straight. It doesn't have a lot of curves. It's not fancy like we see on butterflies. So in this particular group, we have grasshoppers, locusts, crickets, and praying mantis. They inhabit piles of leaves. They love to be in living foliage, dead leaves around your property. They're going to love it. Most of these grasshoppers are good guys.
Does that go for walking sticks? I don't know what they're.
The ones that look like the little tree limbs, tree sticks, those are predators. They eat a lot of aphids and those kinds of things. So if you have those, they're good bugs too. I know a lot of people here in Texas have problems with spider mites and aphids. Yeah. So we see a lot of these insects that just love to feast on those. They usually move by walking. They can fly, in most cases, as an adult. Crickets can't fly. This order of insects lives in deserts, grasslands, forests, caves, and subterranean burrows. I have seen crickets and grasshoppers in caves. Now granted, it's within the first 50 feet of the cave entrance, but they do come in there. I haven't seen them deep in a cave, but maybe one day they'll be down at the bottom. You never know. Orthoptera, beneficial in many ways. Well, here's the grasshopper. He helps the ecosystem by being a major decomposer of plant material. They can process lots of plant material, somewhat on the same scale as worms. Not quite as good as worms, but they can really put a lot of nutrients out. Used by scientists to understand chromosomes and evolution. And one of those reasons is because this grasshopper has remained in this form for millions of years. It's a very sturdy animal. It's one of the ones that have a fairly hard plate across the back. So it's very primitive.
But they also destroy crops.
They can. It all depends on what particular type of grasshopper you're dealing with. These green guys right here They're nasty. They'll eat anything. Those I'd feed to my chickens, if I had chickens. But the brown and the brownish red ones are actually good for your garden because they'll dig in your soil and make a little tunnel so that the water and air get down into your roots. Praying mantis, they're just awesome predators. They eat so many different garden bugs, it's almost hard to list them. They particularly love aphids. And they will also eat beetles. However, you need to be careful with your beetles because a lot of those are beneficial. So it's really a balancing act. You're constantly reassessing what you need to put in your garden, maybe what you need to take out of your yard, and vice versa. All right, the characteristics of insects in this order. We have wings, 2 pair of wings, with the forewing, which is the one in the front, narrower than the one in the back. The one in the back will unfurl while it is flying, and then as soon as it's landed, that will fold up under the top wings and lay flat against its body. So it's like a transformer.
Roll out.
Mouth parts. Mandibles are developed and adapted to chewing. And they love to chew up stuff. But the good thing about them is that they do eat what they chew up. There are other organisms that'll kill all the leaves in your plant, but you'll still have the dead leaf hanging on your plant. So at least you're giving him a little bit of nutrition so that hopefully he'll do good things for your garden. So these mandibles, they can be painful if they have a tendency to bite sometimes. Not necessarily because they're scared of you, it's just the idea that they think maybe you're good to grab onto and take a little bite. So you do want to be careful when you're handling them. I don't handle them without gloves. The head is large, just like the flies. It has compound eyes. And it may include ocelli, which are 3 bumps that you would normally see at the top of their heads. Those 3 bumps, even though they call them eyes, they're actually sensory organs. They'll be able to tell when wind is blowing over them. They pick up smells, they pick up vibrations, and those are some of the organs that they have on their head that do that for them. The compound eyes are basically what they're seeing with. The metamorphosis is incomplete. We only have 3 stages. This is what one of these brown grasshoppers' eggs look like. And they put them in this neat little line down the vein of a plant. That's part of camouflage. Take a quick look underneath the plant, see that leaf. You might not even recognize those as being not part of the plant because it's so neat and tidy.
Are they male and female, or are they both?
Both.
That's why they reproduce.
Yeah. This is the nymph. This is what comes out of the egg. And again, it's one of these little critters that looks a lot like the parent. So it just slowly grows up and transforms into an adult.
And they all start out as eggs?
Yes. Lepidoptera, nature's beauty. For most people, this is their favorite order of insects because they are beautiful. I love butterflies. I know probably a lot of you do too. I spend a lot of time chasing butterflies around trying to get pictures of them. So these are moths. This is actually a butterfly. It's not a moth. Then these are butterflies. Laced wing butterflies, I think, are some of the most fascinating bugs on the planet. Completely transparent. Moths have all these wonderful adaptations in their coloring so that they can keep predators from grabbing them at night. Because they're very active at night, and boy, they'd be a great meal for an owl. This one with the eyes, that one looks menacing, doesn't it? I look at it and I think, ooh, that kind of looks like a snakish kind of thing. All right, let's get to the nitty-gritty. Lepidoptera means scale wings. If you look at a butterfly's wing with a magnifying glass, you will see tiny little scales on his wings. They're very, very interesting. When you get the larger butterflies, you could almost see those scales with your naked eye. But they are scaled almost like fish. It's really interesting to look at. If you ever looked at the top of a hummingbird's head, the same type of scales, or what looks like scales. Moths are night flyers, while butterflies are around in the day. That's good for us butterfly lovers, the moth lovers. I feel bad because they have to be out there in the middle of the night looking for them. Lepidoptera are probably one of the most important pollinators. They do spend an awful lot of time in your garden. They love your flowers, and they will spend their lifetime there. A lot of these butterflies, they have migrated from Mexico back to us. Here in the next probably 6 weeks, we'll be seeing a lot more butterflies. But they're lovely. You just can't help but think they're beautiful. The larvae feed on plant material. The larvae actually have chewy mouth parts, but when you get to an adult, they are going to do nothing but suck nectar. So their eating really changes from the time they hatch until the time they've transformed into their final appearance. As adults, they develop this proboscis. When they are in the nymph stage, they are spending all of their time consuming dead material, usually dead leaves, things that are in your grass that have died. Sometimes people have said that they actually thought that the eggs were eating areas in their grass where they have little bald spots. I'm not sure that's true. I could never find any evidence of that. But I have seen them in the grass.
Beth, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
With this heat wave that we're getting, does that speed up the process on these butterflies?
Nope. Doesn't seem to make any difference if it's 100 degrees or it's 85. Their life cycle is very short. So when you have an adult butterfly, most of them die within 48 hours. Some of them might live up to 5 to 7 days. And that all depends on where they are too, because if there's a lot of predators, a lot of those get weeded out because the predators are going to see them first because they are so bright. But they've adapted. Their wings can have different patterns, shapes, and colors on them to really camouflage them in the places that they're most accustomed to being in. These are the beautiful visitors of our gardens. Butterflies are attracted to brightly colored flowers. There was a scientist who did a study back in the early 2000s about which colors they were most attracted to, and it was in the yellow, orange, pink, and red. Those were the ones that they were most attracted to. When you got into the purples and the blues, they had some activity, but not anything like the other flowers did. So that leads me to believe that the brighter the color, the more attracting it's going to be to these particular types. I've had lots of areas where I've had purple and blue flowers. I have actually noticed it myself because my yard's kind of divided up into sections. And where I do have the sunflowers, lots of marigolds, those kinds of things that are the yellows and the oranges, I do have more butterflies there. The moths, nocturnal predators. They pollinate a wide variety of plants. However, they're really kind of particular about it. They like it when the plant smells good. So if that plant has a really heavy aroma, you're going to see more and more moths in your backyard. Now, this looks like a moth, but they're called skippers. They're little. You know, we're used to butterflies being fairly large. These are tiny little bugs. And those skippers are related to the butterfly. They have this unique antenna where they have hooked clubs at the end of their antenna. When I was identifying one of these, the first thing I looked at was that antenna, because I couldn't find anything in any other reference book that said it had strange clubs on the end. And I stuck that into the Google search and boom, came up with this.
Is that the same one as the snow nose, or is that a different?
That's a different one. They have powerful muscles. They can really fly long distances. So even though they're small, they're mighty. Bermuda grass is where they love to lay their eggs. They love Bermuda grass. Now, zorsha, I've known people that had zorsha grass. I guess that's for the shaded areas here. They like it there too. So I'm going to just throw it out there and say they really like to be in the grass. I don't think they're going to be particular about whether or not you have actual Bermuda or not. But look out for those skippers. Once you see your first one, you'll be like, oh, those are so cool, because they're really very, very small. And they do have that silky, powdery wing characteristic that the moths have. All right, let's look at the characteristics. We have two pair of wings that are covered in microscopic scales. They have large, rounded wings that are folded at rest. That's very different than the moths. Because if you see a moth against a tree in the night, they have their wings spread. So that's how they prefer to rest, is with their wings spread out. Butterflies are always going to make that nice little peak with their wings. That's for protection, mostly. Mouth parts. Well, they're tubular mouth parts that act like straws. They suck liquids out of the plants in the form of nectar. The head has two compound eyes, and moths also have a pair of small eyes, again called the ocelli, which are the ones at the top of his head. And again, those are sensory organs, not necessarily helping him with his vision at all. Legs are covered in scales, and there's olfactory organs at their feet, which they use to taste and smell food. It's made out of 3 sections, each having a pair of true legs. And then we have a complete metamorphosis. It's going from egg to larva for caterpillars, the pupa or chrysalis, and then for the full adult. Hymenoptera, the queen shall reign. These are our bees. Our main pollinators. I have read in so many different publications that if bees were eradicated from the planet, we would starve, and it wouldn't take long. That's scary. We really need to be protecting our bee populations all we can. Some crops are only pollinated by bees. If we don't have bees, we don't have corn. If we don't have bees, we don't have green beans. Those disappear in a lot of the things that we buy at the store. We're going to have to start growing on our own because we won't be able to buy them. Nope, unfortunately. All right. The stings of bees can be harmful to humans who are hypersensitive to their venom. I know when I was teaching, I always knew the kids that had bee allergies because mom would come in the first day with an EpiPen. So they can hurt you. This group of insects is considered to be the most beneficial of all the insects. 150,000 known species of bees. That's a lot of different kinds of bees. That shows you how readily they're adaptable to be able to live in all different kinds of environments, to do all kinds of different jobs, pollinating all kinds of crops. In Central America, they pollinate all the coffee crops. So if you're a coffee drinker, thank a bee. The ants also are in this particular group, mainly because of their internal and external body structure. They do have the strange little antenna that flip over, not quite as much as the actual bees. Wasps, you can always tell the difference between a bee and a wasp because that wasp has always got that pinched waist. And we'll see some different examples of that. Bees are one of the most effective pollinators. 85% of the world crops are pollinated by bees. Beeswax is used to construct the combs where they raise their brood and store pollen and honey for the winter. Has anybody ever been over to the bee store on 46? That is really a cool place. If you've never been over there, go take a look at it. They have everything bees you can possibly imagine. It's really an interesting store. The wasps are predators. They're big-time predators. They can also harm your crops, but the best thing about wasps, they love aphids. So if you've got an aphid issue, don't kill your wasps. Now there's a difference between a wasp and a hornet. Wasps are a little tamer than the hornets. I don't know that I've ever seen a hornet here.
Yeah.
There are them here. I guess I'm just lucky I haven't seen one. A nest? Oh, did he?
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh, because they burrow in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw.
He found out he could run. He was very impressed.
I saw a guy.
He said he hasn't ran in 20 years.
I saw a guy who was out bush hogging a field, and he ran over a nest like that. And I was watching what he was doing, you know, because I just didn't have anything else to do, I guess. And the next thing I know, he's jumped off the tractor and he's stripping down his pants. He pulls off his shorts. He's left there in his boxers and he's just jumping around. I got closer to him because I thought, oh my God, the guy's flipping out in the middle of the field. So I walk out there and he's just covered in hornets. And they had gotten up in his clothes and he was in bad shape. He really got stung a lot of times. I thought, man, I missed a good chance for America's Funniest Video winners, but you know, I didn't record it. And then the ants. These are important because they do a lot of soil aeration. If you've ever looked at a big ant mound, you know that all of that mound is what they've kicked out of their tunnels. They're just like miners. They have the spoils, and the spoils go to the surface. So the bigger the pile, the bigger that tunnel system is underground. I know some of you get on Facebook and you see the guys who take the molten metals and they pour them down and they come out with these huge multi-leveled, multi-layered kind of freaky looking sculptures where all of these ants had burrowed down in the ground. They like to eat the eggs of insects. And this is really a good thing. They will get in your garden and they will hunt and they will find those bugs and they will eat them. So they're really important. Fire ants, I don't even know why they're on the planet. So that being said,
Can you kill the fire ants without killing the helpful ants?
you can. I use Dawn dish soap. One of those big pump things. You pump it up with air and then you spray. I use 1 part of Dawn to every gallon of water. I put it in the sprayer and you go out and douse those guys. The thing that the soap does is it clings to the outside of them and they can't breathe. So you're basically suffocating them all. And if you do it really, really well and soak it so you know it's going down, you will see this immediate abundance of ants coming to the surface. And then you stand there, I got you, I got you, I got you. Yes, Paul.
I use 7. I basically stir the nest up, and when they all come to the surface, I sprinkle them with 7, and they take it back down.
Yeah.
That usually does it the first couple.
Yeah, it does. 7 works very, very well.
7?
Yeah. It will kill lots of things. I'm very organic in the things that I grow, just because I don't want the pesticides in me.
Did you have to add a surfactant to your Dawn dish soap
No,
recipe?
nope, just Dawn dish soap.
So you said the ratio is 1 part.
1 part soap to 4 parts water.
How much soap?
Depends on how big your container is. I usually do 2 gallons, so I put a cup of soap in it sometimes if I've got a really bad infestation. Otherwise, I maybe use a quarter. But the fire ants really, really don't like the soap. And if you can get them to start coming up out of the nest, you know that it's getting down into the ground, and you just keep on getting it wet. And pretty soon you'll go out a little later, and that whole area is black because it's got all these dead ants on top. It's really kind of cool.
Is there any detriment to that for the garden?
No, no, the Dawn dish soap does not hurt a thing.
You can also use DE if you don't want to use like a pesticide. You can use DE. I just go and pick the filth, make them all come up
And spray it.
all of them, and they're just like,
Unfortunately, I guess it's because I'm getting old. When I go and stomp on a thing to do something like that, I end up with 15 on my feet. You know, maybe when I was younger, I could have did that, you know, jump back, but not now. Yes.
Karen had a question.
Does orange oil work with?
I have never used it. I have never read about using orange oil. It's got enough surfactant in it, I think, that you could probably use it because all you're trying to do is suffocate them. And any of that soap is going to cling to their exoskeleton.
I think orange oil is probably a lot more expensive than Dawn.
It might be. I've just never thought of it. Dawn seems to work really well, and you don't worry about it if your dogs get out there and sniff around it or any of that. I don't know about the orange oil. I don't know what it would do to your grass, because that's always my problem, trying to find something that's not going to kill my grass, but it's going to kill the ants. Yes.
A couple of weeks ago, somebody in here mentioned cornmeal.
Cornmeal?
And
I tried that. It didn't work.
I
It ain't biscuits. I mean, it didn't work.
Yeah, I have.
piled into one of my beds, and I couldn't sprinkle cornmeal on her dog. I don't know if they
Yeah.
die.
I equate putting the cornstarch down, just like the people on the paranormal shows put the salt ring around them. It works about the same. It's cornmeal.
it won't work for leaf-litter ants.
No. I don't know of any ants that it works on. Because I get into looking at some of these things, and I'll go and I'll try it. Like one time I read that you can keep different kinds of bugs out of your garden if you put like human hair or animal hair around the perimeter. All it did was get the deer in. So. Okay. We have said everything we need to say about this one. Cleoptera. These are pretty. These are a lot of predator bugs and a lot of really creepy looking things that have been here a while. This rhinoceros beetle. I saw one of these at a living science museum one time. The guy walked over and said, "Put out your hand." Don't ever do that on a field trip. And he stuck one of these monsters in my hand. And it was like, okay, what do I do not to freak out here in front of 45 children? They're kind of weird. They have these little feet, you know, these tiny little feet for that big old thing. They're just really strange. And they're hard. You can thump them. They can. They can. Now, I've never been pinched by one. Obviously, the one that he gave me had been hand trained. But I would imagine if you tried to, you know, find one of those things and yank it up off the ground, I imagine it'd turn around and bite you.
I worked for one of my bosses and he collected them. Actually, he found like 10 species.
Really?
And I like the poop beetles. They have them in my yard and they roll the food. You see them roll. I love them. They help me with the making.
One of the first things I did after I took this class was invest in ladybugs. Because that's one of the things, when I put my strips out, I never caught any ladybugs. So I got a double order of ladybugs because I knew some of them were going to get eaten up by what was already out there. 4 years later, I still have the ladybugs out there. They're growing in population, and they are really taking good care of my roses. Uh-huh. Yeah, they're little tiny ones, yeah. They're not quite as fun to watch as butterflies, but they are cool. All right, let's see what this has as far as characteristics. It's the largest order in the class Insecta. More beetles than anything else. And I think a lot of this has to do with their body structure because they're basically in a shell of armor. Not a lot of things are going to come after these because they do have a tendency to either have some kind of chemical in their body that makes them taste awful. They have different adaptations that make them camouflage into their environment, or they're just too ugly to try and tackle. The dung beetles, they are hilarious. If you have ever seen a video, David Attenborough has a video out that he has dung beetles in one of the section. And it's like they're having a competition. There's a whole bunch of them out there and they're just rolling poop and rolling poop and rolling poop. They are. June bugs, they're good, but they like to get my roses. So those are the kind of things, you know, you're kind of walking a fine line. You just make sure you check frequently. And if you see something like that cropping up, take care of it right away. They reduce the population of problem insects, especially caterpillars. And this is what I love about this particular order. They love caterpillars. They'll eat maggots. They'll eat mealworms. They'll eat your good red racers that you have in your garden. They'll eat anything that they can get their hands on, and they love it. They've been around here a long time, and I guess that's maybe why they have so many compared to the other types of insects. 270 million years, the species has been on the planet. The rhino beetle, I'm thinking probably looks pretty similar to what I did back then. I think that's got that, yeah, it's got that dinosaur, but I'm a bug kind of look. Ladybugs, I'm sorry.
June bugs don't come out in June. I mean,
No, they don't. The only place I know of that they're actually out in June is Michigan. So I don't know if the first person who ever saw a June bug said, "Oh, it's June." But I have seen them in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in June. And it's weird because you think of them as being something that comes out in the heat. Yeah. But they're adaptable. Wherever they live, they're going to adapt to that environment. They're going to adapt to the food sources. And that's why they've been here 270 million years. Is there?
Mayflies.
Mayflies.
Are there mayflies?
There are mayflies. Okay. These are the kind of beetles that are going to show you the greatest diversity in that particular group. We go from ground beetles. These things live in the grass. You don't see a lot of them unless they come up on your patio at night. They are attracted by the light, somewhat like mosquitoes and other night creatures. They are very, very hardy. You can run them over with a lawnmower and it doesn't seem to bother them. So when you find those, you really, really need to be careful because they are beneficial bugs. If you see one and it's on your patio, if you do what I do, I pick it up and take it and put it back in the grass. Because they're going to eat a lot of the things in the grass before it gets into your garden. Then here's our ladybug. This is what I think of when I think of beetles. This ladybug. They are voracious predators. You wouldn't think that to look at them, and certainly they're not named with a name that would lead you to believe it was a monster. But they have an appetite for aphids as well. They have natural pest control agents that they excrete. So they keep other insects from wanting to eat them, which is very good for the beetle. Not so good for the bird. They eat mites, mealybugs, leafhoppers, and insect eggs, especially insect eggs. So if you have a lot of insects that are rooting around in your yard, you might want to introduce some of these because they'll take care of it. I'm sorry.
So the one that you have the picture of, that's actually an Asian ladybug, right? Which is somewhat different than our native.
It is.
Do they both provide the same benefit?
Yes, they do.
In the garden?
Yep.
But the Asian ones can be like toxic to pets and stuff.
Yeah, they can. Well, the Native American beetles can too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The native ladybug?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
This long fur longhorn beetle, I chose him because it's just a really cool photograph.
Looks like a coyote.
Yeah, it is. So that thing is really, really covered with all kinds of sensory mechanisms that helping him decode what's going on around him. They love to habitate dead or decomposing trees. So if you have a tree in your yard, especially one that you've planted recently, less than 2 years old, if you start seeing a lot of those around, your tree's in trouble. Because one thing that these particular beetle varieties are, is they're very opportunistic. If they see something, whether it's something you want to keep or not, they don't care. They'll go after it. Then the dung beetle over here. We have 58 species of dung beetles just here in Texas. They are great at recycling nutrients. They reduce livestock pests and pathogens. And that's really good for the farmers because there are a lot of different kinds of pests that we don't think affect other animals on the planet. But some of those beetles actually drill little holes in their hosts and put their eggs inside them. And if you have that happen over and over again to an animal, that animal can be sick pretty quick. They like cows, so that particular cattle livestock is susceptible to those. They keep areas clean by removing dung that can breed flies. Just weird.
Where do they put it? What do they do? I've never heard of that before.
A dung beetle?
They roll.
They literally will go and they get the stuff. You can watch them. They'll kind of use their long arms to get it into a ball or a semi-ball, and then they'll start rolling it. Yeah, and they will roll it until they've met up with other ones that are doing the same thing. And they're all taking it to a particular place.
Was the safest beetle in Egypt?
Yes, the scarabs. Yes.
Don't they deposit their eggs in that dung?
The dung beetles or just beetles in general?
The dung beetles, isn't that why they're rolling up poop in little balls?
No, actually, they are going to, did you say eat it?
No, they lay their eggs.
They lay their eggs in it. They can lay their eggs in it, but most of the time they're consuming it.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
That's different.
Yeah, they're a recycler.
Breakfast of champions.
Exactly.
Is it just cow manure or is it?
Can be any kind. They like manure. Identifying insects by their wings. Now, we talked about the different characteristics of those particular orders. We have an idea of what the head structure, the leg structure, the wing structure is going to be something that's going to help us identify. So here's just examples of some of the different types of wings. Dragonflies are one of my favorites. Those wings work independently, which I think is very cool. And again, a lace wing. They're just beautiful things. This particular beetle has this hard case that covers the back. And when it wants to fly, that case opens up, and then here are the wings. Again, when those bugs land, they're going to fold those wings down, and they're going to close up that hard shell. And it's a form of protection for the bug. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. But that's something that you need to look at when you're looking at the bugs. Does it have one set of wings? Does it have two sets of wings? Does it have no wings at all? That's going to help you identify it. Sensory appendages, they have a lot of them. Their antenna, their compound eyes. This particular type, you can see the line very faintly. It runs right here. That line of its body is full of sensory organs. It's smelling through its abdomen. Some insects breathe through their anus. So they're really different. This one is particularly nasty. Look at those barbs on his back. So he can get you coming and going. That's a beetle of some sort? Is it an earwig? All right, identifying insects. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at some bugs under magnifying glasses, and we're going to give you an opportunity to start seeing what you just heard. Looking at their legs, looking at their wings, looking at their mouths, looking at their heads, all those things. And you can get an idea of what you're starting to look for when you get your own collection of bugs. Because I know you're going to have one. Most people pin their bugs. All right, let's take a 10-minute break. But that would have been a little bit of a hazard. When I look at bugs, I basically have a notebook. I open it up and I list these things. I put the wings, mouth parts, head, antenna, and legs. Leave a couple spaces between each one. Then you can start taking your notes when you're looking at the bug. I use a jeweler's loop. That's the best thing to use. You can get them fairly inexpensively off of that famous online store. Jeweler's loop. Loop. Yeah. Those are excellent because... You
can get them there.
Yeah, you can. They are excellent because you can really get up close and you can see just very minute details. What you have is a 10x lens. It's better than what you would normally use if you were looking through most little hand lenses. So they are a little more powerful. You should be able to see the legs if it has any bristles. You should be able to identify the antenna fairly easily, and you should be able to identify mouth parts. Now, the way I do it is one particular way. It was from years of doing this, trying to understand what bugs were in my yard, and this is the system I came up with. It's easy for me. However, you have a handout that says a pictorial key to the order of adult insects. Now, this is a rubric. And this particular rubric goes in a cascade process. It's almost like the flow charts you used to use when you set up computer programming. This does a hierarchy of insects. So in the first page, the first example basically is going to have you decide if it has wings or if it is wingless. That's your first category. If it has wings, you head down the left-hand side of the chart. It's going to start asking you about mouth parts. It's going to ask you about wings. And you just follow what matches what you're seeing. It'll get to the point where you're moving on, because this rubric is several pages long, where it's actually going to start giving you an idea. If you look on page 64, by the time you get over 3 pages, it's saying your insect is a diphthera. When you get to diphthera, then you know basically what you're going to start looking for. I use books. These are the books that I find irreplaceable. If you are interested in knowing all you can possibly want to know about bugs and be able to identify anything that you find in your yard, you need this. This is the Common Insects of Texas. It's by John Abbott and Kendra Abbott. This is an excellent book. Now, at the time I got this book, it was when I was taking the class, and this was one of the great things about getting into advanced classes. When I signed up for the class, she told me to expect a box of materials because it was all online. I thought it would be a bunch of handouts. I opened the box. It had a brand new jeweler's loop. It had a tiny little microscope that you could turn lights on, and you could. It was really a nice little microscope if you're going to do field work. And these 2 books. This one is my Bible. If I'm trying to identify an insect, I'm going to go here. This is where I'm going to identify it. I'm going to find out its characteristics, and it's going to give me enough information to move on to something like this. Now, this really wasn't written specifically to identify books. This is more in, you found a bug, and here's what you can do about it.
Here's how you kill it.
Exactly. And they do have quite creative ways. It's not always the stomp and smear that I have a habit of doing.
That one works.
It does work. Managing alternative pollinators is wonderful because it talks about all the unsung heroes. It has a section on flies. So this is really a good book. And it's going to really give you some good advice if you have a problem and you're just not getting on top of it. It'll give you some suggestions.
That first book that you have,
Yes.
you can get it for your Kindle for $2.99.
Awesome.
That one right there?
Mm-hmm. Now, the last time I looked on Amazon, this book was running right around $16.
It's $26.95.
It's gone up, hasn't it? Shoo. Yep. But these are excellent books. Now, I don't care which direction you want to go. If you want to use the rubric and start out with, you know, is it have wings, not have wings? Does it have chewing mouth parts, not chewing mouth parts? If you want to use that rubric, it's very quick and easy. I like a little more information with my bugs, so I dig down a little bit more because I'm wanting to know what is it doing to my garden? What do I need to do if I have to get rid of it? And if I don't want to get rid of it, how do I keep it here? So we're going to take a little bit of time. Everybody's got a magnifying glass. At the ends of your tables, you should have these little acrylic pucks. They are full of bugs. Nope, you didn't have any? I'll get you some. If you would spread them down, I gave each table more than I think you actually need, except I missed that table. So, if you get all the way through the rubric and you believe that you have found the proper order, excuse me. Hello. Thank you. If you find that you have been able to identify what class you're in, and you've got the order, so you know it's in the cricket family, it's in the beetle family, whatever you're looking at, you can't come look at my book because it's divided up in orders. So it's fairly easy to move through. So we will take, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, unless you just look at bugs. He's a scorpion, he's that. You don't want spiders. There's a bitty beetle. Nice wasps. And if you pass them down, I'll give you plenty so that you can switch them back and forth. That's a pretty one.
Yeah. So pick one, pass them down, and then
Then you can just switch back, yep. If you just see if you can't move some of those down the line. What is wrong? Do what I tell you. I gave you just a little taste of what it's like to look at bugs and trying to determine the characteristics that are going to help you identify them. Because again, what we're looking for is an identification. It could be that we can never find a bug that looks exactly like that one, but you're going to find one that's similar in the books that you read, the research that you do, and it's going to have the same characteristics. So it's just a matter of doing some reading and lots of looking. And I think that's the fun part because they're all kind of the same, but they're all really different too. So it's really interesting. Okay. Insect photography is really a big business. There are lots of people who have lots of equipment that they're able to take microscopic pictures. Remember the flea, the alien monster? Yes. That was through a microelectron microscope. Wow. So they get awesome pictures. I use my iPhone to take pictures of bugs. I know that there are a lot of people that are serious and they get that 35 millimeter out there and they'll get it real close and they'll take beautiful pictures. Don't get me wrong, they're beautiful. But the only reason I'm taking the pictures is because I want to identify it. The reason they're taking pictures is because they're creating art. That's right. And the art of insect photography is beautiful. Look at these.
Oh, that's the cutest thing. Look at that, looks like a little butt with its little.
Now, I put this one up here because everybody's like, oh, look at the bee with the cute butt. I have never seen a bee with a butt. Not like that. This is an example of what wonderful people who like to play with Photoshop do to some of their pictures. This is a bee with a corgi butt.
That's why you never trust anyone.
Yeah.
Somebody has way too much time on their hands.
Well, as a matter of fact, the guy, I looked him up after I saw this picture, and he has hundreds of pictures where he's morphing animals with different insects. Wow. It's really kind of cool, and that's how he's made his mark in the photography community. So they're really very interesting. Now, this thing goes from my tip to my fingers to about up, midway up my arm. They are huge. You don't have to worry about them because they only live in Australia. This is a bumblebee. Isn't that beautiful? Who knew that a bumblebee could be so pretty?
It's like the front end of a Jaguar.
Anybody guess what this is? It is. It's called the lotus praying mantis. It really starts looking like a flower. And look at this one.
That came from Mars.
It did, but it's another praying mantis variety. We're accustomed to the green ones. You go to different climates, especially the rainforest, and we start seeing mantis that just, I mean, they're from outer space.
You know where that one came from?
These are all Australians. All these three are Australia.
I would have thought it was Amazon, because down in the Amazon, they have really bright.
Yes, they do. I'm fascinated with the bugs in Australia for some reason, so I always try to include them. They grow so big there. You know, the characteristics will be very similar to things like grasshoppers that we have here, but they're like the size of pets. So,
No, thank you.
no thank you. Look at that beetle. He is beautiful.
Looks like a brooch.
Doesn't it? Just the idea of a wasp putting up its nest. That's really pretty. It's a striking picture.
Yeah.
That's a caterpillar.
That was a Mardi Gras clothes.
It does look like one. But that caterpillar does come from Central America, and it creates a giant moth. And its name just left me. So photography has become a really big business, mostly because of the advancements in cameras. We're able to get closer. The idea that so many scientists are interested in bugs and what they can do for the human population, it doesn't surprise me that somebody took it the art way, because we only think of bugs as being something that we study scientifically. This shows a different side.
Bug's Life or whatever, it's on one of the TV shows or channels, and then it does the whole, like, tells you how the bug, you know, all about that.
How they metamorphosize and everything.
And it's not like the animated one.
Uh-huh.
You know, like,
Is it a kid show? Is it a kid show? No, it's for adults. That's pretty cool. All right, even more interesting looking things. Now,
That's crazy.
which one?
this guy right here, the first time I saw it, I thought, what the heck is growing out of that watermelon? That's a big leaf bug. This is an Asiatic bee, another beautiful butterfly. And this picture here it was a really good picture of the proboscis that those particular insects suck out the pollen and the nectar out of the flowers.
Is that an Australian dragonfly too?
Yep, they're everywhere.
Crazy.
The best place to look for insects, if you want to look for a wide variety, or wetlands, meadows, and other areas that has vegetation, your garden is a perfect place. So if you want to take your iPhone out there and take a lot of pictures of the bugs, you'll learn a lot of stuff about the things living in your garden. I have a rule, as long as I have something in the ground that is up and has a stem and leaves, it gets looked at every single day. I look under the leaves. I look around the bottom. I look over them all. And I actually sit and take notes because I want to know if that changes tomorrow. Because if I see a couple of aphids on my cabbages, I want to take care of the 2 I have on it right now instead of the 150,000 I have on it 24 hours. Yes?
What do you do about pill bugs? I raise beds and
Pill bugs are pill bugs. They really don't do much except dig in the ground and aerate your soil. Yeah, they're kind of innocuous little garden visitors.
And I've noticed the coloring of them seems to change. Some of them are almost like see-through. They're just...
I've heard of that. I've never seen one like that, but I've heard that. What part of town are you from?
Marion.
Marion, okay. The lady that told me about it was in San Antonio, so.
Marion, is that a wide spot in the road? One stop.
They got a beautiful park there.
I don't even live over there with the town. We're on the other side of I-10.
Also, photography can be used to help explain some of the things that you had learned about bugs. This particular series of photographs is after this moth has escaped from its chrysalis. It is sitting there really pretty defenseless, and those are its wings. Now that insect is going to climb on something so its head is vertical of its tail, because that's going to help pump what it needs to pump into the wings to help them unfurl. This can take several minutes. I've done monarch butterflies coming out of the chrysalis, could take up to 90 minutes to actually get to the point they would start flapping their wings. They're still not going to fly until those wings dry. So there is a very extended period of time after they come out of the chrysalis that they're very susceptible to being somebody's dinner. But this is the progress. You can see how it slowly pumps blood, or what we call their blood, into their body until we have this. That's quite a drastic change from here to here. Yes. And the only reason I needed it was because this explains that process. And I had a unique opportunity being able to see that. So again, my iPhone.
I've never even seen one of those.
Me neither.
I did it in North Carolina. Yeah, aren't they? They're exquisite.
Is there like a pamphlet or something, you know, like you can see at HEB that, you know, has what's around here, what's the big...
You're talking about those trifolds you see up. I haven't really seen one, and I'm one of those people that picks up those trifolds constantly because they're just really great reference. I throw them in the glove box.
Snakes.
Knots, medicinal plants, all kinds of stuff. I like the one that the plants that you can forage.
Yeah.
And I look down the list, and there's not a single one on there I'd eat. No.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
What part of North Carolina did you take them in?
It was around the Chapel Hill area.
So you're in the triangle.
Yes. I spent some time at the University of North Carolina. Now, one of the things that probably is bringing in the most money for people who deal with insects is insect farming. They're very, very popular in the eastern continents. They're very popular in Korea, Japan, China. The Soviet Union is also starting to convert some of their major factories into insect processing, because as they have started relinquishing a lot of their resources in their war, they're running out of food. So they are taking advantage of the protein that these insects bring. And I tell you, it's nothing to sneeze at, that's for sure. Because chefs, Michelin-starred chefs, are cooking menus incorporating bugs. This is bug sushi. And we not only have the full-grown insects here, but they also give us some cucumbers with larvae. Yum. Insects are actually very, very nutritious. They have lots of amino acids, lots of vitamin D. They have a chemical in their shell that's called chitin. That is something that when you eat it, it helps with dry skin. So there are all kinds of things that these things will do for you if you eat them. I've even had people tell me they were the perfect addition to their keto diets because they're always looking for more ways to include protein. These are little mealworms. They serve those in all sorts of flavors. I've had the barbecue and the honey mustard. The honey mustard is okay, but the barbecue is really pretty good. This is something that you would really want to have the taste for because these are rotisserie maggots. We have our crickets and grasshoppers. It does come in very interesting packaging.
They're barbecued, right, the top one?
Yes. These are some of the insects that are the most popular. Scorpions is one of them. Now, scorpions is a close cousin to our insects. Still high in protein. Tarantulas are also something that is very, very high in protein. It doesn't have a bad, funky taste. Yes. However, I think it's hard to swallow. It's not because, you get your mind thing going and everything's hard to swallow. Like, oh.
You just pop the whole thing in your mouth?
No, that's too big. I'd choke. Oh, I bit it, yeah. Yeah, you just you pull the segments apart. And you just eat it by segments. Yeah.
You better be $1 million waiting.
Now, I was raised on a farm, so when I had family who would butcher pigs or take care of chickens, they always ate the chicken feet. That's what the legs of the tarantula remind me of, is fried chicken feet.
Time to kill another chicken.
Yeah. But they are all, this amazes me here, because not only do we have 2 succulent tarantulas, but they're also giving us some cucumber and a plum dipping sauce. Yes.
There's a saying. Okay, I bought my wife a book on edible wild plants. She's real particular. So I put in there, hunger is the best spice.
You got that right. You'll eat anything. Yes.
You get hungry enough, you'll eat a book.
You will.
Palm grubs that they deep fry.
Oh, do they? Are they good?
Of what?
They're messy.
Are they? Some of them are messy. The tarantulas, when you buy them, they're cooked so thoroughly that they kind of start falling apart.
They crunch.
Yeah, they crunch.
I read an article where, those worms that you were showing earlier, the big, huge ball of them? I heard that they incorporate them into the plant burgers. As part of the food.
No. That's a wives' tale.
Is it?
Yeah. Most of the protein coming out of there is chickpeas.
Really?
Yep.
I don't trust them.
Now, it's interesting because a lot of you have got this look on your face right now that's like, I don't think I'd ever eat a bug, right? You eat them every day. You eat them every day. And let me show you why.
No.
The Department of Agriculture has created a grade standard for manufacturing and packaging food. That standard tells each manufacturer exactly how many insects and what part of the insects can be in the food before it is rejected. So, ketchup. Ketchup, you can have 30 fruit fly eggs per 100 grams of ketchup. That's allowed.
Well, that's it for ketchup.
Canned corn. You can have up to 2 insect larvae in your canned corn for it to be passable.
So they rinse it, right? No? Would it matter?
It's been cooked in that can with the bug inside.
Well, then it kills the bug, right?
Well, it kills the bug. To me, it wouldn't make any difference. To somebody with a very discerning palate, it might gross them out. I don't know.
That one of them, I don't believe.
True, I always rinse out my phone, that liquid that those, I always take that out. I used to eat it, but now I don't, now that I'm older.
I quit eating canned food, period. And this was one of the reasons. So blueberries, you can have 2 maggots per 100 berries. Only 2, wow.
So a pound.
Peanut butter, 50 insect fragments. Legs, antennas, who knows what parts. Per 100 grams of peanut butter. So you can see, this is just a very, very short list. They're providing protein, and you didn't even know you ate them.
Okay, is there a way we can find out all this?
You can look up the USDA grade standards, and it will give you a list that is multi-pages long. It literally goes through every canned or packaged food sold in the U.S.
There's also like limits on how many rat droppings.
Exactly.
I don't mean I want to.
Now, I've got a challenge for you. As I've told you, my father liked bugs. When you're a little kid, you just eat what they give you, you know. So we ate quail, we ate deer, we ate everything he could possibly catch. I have brought a treat for you. I have some edible bugs. Now, they're mealworms. They're very small. They are barbecue flavored. If you would like to try them, do you have anybody who would like to try?
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
I want them big ass here.
I brought crickets to class last year, and I didn't have anybody able to swallow it. I just saw people keep spitting it out. Did you eat it? Oh, well, I did too. I was surprised that so many people didn't like it. You want to go around? These are mealworms, yep. Now, when you get the insects at one of those online stores, it's going to have all your nutritional information right there for you on the package. So you know that it is regulated by the FDA.
The beetle of the day is.
So here we go. That whole box, which basically covers the bottom of that container, it has 10 calories in the whole box.
This better be barbecue flavored.
It is barbecue flavored. But the one thing I want you to pay close attention to is this. Look at the fat content. It has 59 hundredths of a gram of fat. That's not negligible at all. Plus, you have no sugars at all. And in that tiny little 1 ounce serving, the tiny little 1 ounce serving, you have a whole gram of protein.
Okay, I gotta take a picture of this.
Yeah. So, that little box I showed you was 1 gram. The whole box. Now, that little box, they're not expensive. You can even buy big bags if you want to go all out and really do some bug eating. And it's fairly inexpensive. If you had the choice between eating bugs and hamburger, most people would probably say the hamburger. But I do truly believe that as time passes, we're all going to be eating more bugs.
They have to turn it back around.
We're all going to be eating more bugs.
Because our food supply is getting
Yes, yes. Well, we're eating up all of our farmland with subdivisions. We're the biggest, we have the biggest farms in the world, and they're being diminished. They're being diminished because of all the building around the areas. It's really sad.
It is scary.
Yeah, and you know, there are a lot of organizations that are trying to get people to stop raising cattle at all.
Well, and then we've exported everything out,
Yeah.
and now to get it back into the food, we're gonna have to spend more money.
Yeah, and it's nasty.
And it is gross.
You're right, yeah. Okay. Did everybody get to taste a bug?
Yes.
That want it? Doesn't taste barbecue? Maybe you needed to chuck a whole handful. Maybe.
Are you saying that, you know, that mealy worms that come in that bag at Tractor Supply that's $50?
No, those are not farm raised. Those are just things that get out. Now, they may be farm raised, but they're not raised in a laboratory to make sure that they are completely clean. Because those that were in that package never touched the ground. They were grown in a laboratory setting.
Well, I did taste it.
They're delicious.
Aren't they?
They're yummy.
I think they are yummy. Okay, we're going to take another real quick break because I need to collect all this stuff and get hooked up for another presentation. So let's take about a 7-8 minute break and then come back. They're mealworms.
Jeff, what are we collecting?